Hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey! Oh, we're starting. We're starting.
Yep.
3. 2. Keep this in, by the way.
3, 2, 1.
Will you cut this out?
Nope, it's all
cut
staying
out,
in. It's
please.
all staying.
Oh, no! I'm not singing it then. I'm not singing.
Alright, forget it then. Will you?
Well, how come you only want tomorrow? What song is that?
It's a song, I don't know.
It's a song. That is Teenage Wildlife.
No, I know,
the
yeah.
opening track to side 2. We'll get to that though. What's going on, Rob?
What's up everybody? How's it going? Back to the Bowie Discography series. Yet again, we're on a roll.
We really are on a roll. We were talking about that just a couple minutes ago off camera, that since I think as far back as April, we've been, a little bit more consistent with the content between.
It's about damn time.
I know. So, yes, I guess. But, more great content's going to continue. I'm prepping for 1966. Rob just did an awesome video with his wife with a 30-day album challenge.
That was fun.
Absolutely check out. I'm going to point somewhere, and I'm going to piss Rob off because now it's going to be linked somewhere. So.
Put it in there.
More. That's
alright, don't worry, it's fine. It's right in the beginning of the video, so it's acceptable.
Okay, there you go.
And for those who are listening to the podcast, you have no idea what we're talking about. Check out the YouTube channel.
So I was pointing in several directions. Rob was pointing in a direction. So there you go. Now you know. All right. So Rob, what are we doing here tonight?
Scary monsters. We're gonna talk about scary monsters. And super creeps.
Yes, scary monsters. My God, I feel like I say this every episode, but I am really excited to talk about this record.
Same.
But I'll tell you, part of the reason why I'm exceptionally excited to talk about this record tonight is I've been taking out the vinyl again. And
me too.
In this series, this was the first record that I listened to on. So
this is technically the only. Rachel has a couple Bowie albums. It's the only Bowie album I have on vinyl, and it's not that I haven't tried. He's hard to get, and when I do find him, he's expensive. Except, and I'm talking like not reissues because I know you can get reissues anywhere, but I'm talking like vintage vinyl. He's I don't see him in the wild very often.
Well, I got lucky, and it's almost like I'm taking it for granted because, again, this is the first one I listened to on vinyl for this series. I had the majority of what you and I would probably consider the golden era, 1970 that is to 1980. And other than Young Americans and Heroes, I have all the 70s records on vinyl,
Very
all
nice.
Original pressing, most of them. Do you remember the Strawberry Coupe?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that I got them in bulk. That's how I got most of them. I got like the first 6 that way.
Wow.
I think the only ones I bought separately were Low and maybe Station to Station. I don't remember.
Wow, that's great.
All original pressings. Every Bowie album I own on vinyl. So so I got pretty lucky. But this was the first one I listened to on vinyl. So whatever. But,
and it's a great one.
Yes, if you haven't figured out, we are talking about. If you're following our timeline, album number 13, but technically in the canon, album number 14, because some people count pinups. We don't, of course, but, yeah. Yeah, I'm saying, no,
Nah, pinups, no.
we don't count that. So, should we get into it?
Just get right into it. Let's do it.
Personnel, I just want to remind everybody that a lot of, or I should say the majority of my research comes from the complete David Bowie, written by Nicholas Pegg. I cannot recommend that book enough. Check it out. So Scary Monsters. Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, also known simply as Scary Monsters, is the 14th studio album by English musician David Bowie. Released on September 12th, 1980 by RCA Records. This might be the last one on RCA, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Over the past 3 years, Bowie garnered massive artistic success with the Berlin Trilogy, which consisted, as you know, of Low, Heroes, and Lodger. However, the trilogy had proven less successful commercially. By 1980, numerous artists Bowie had inspired with the Berlin trilogy were outperforming him commercially, which led him to go into a more commercial style, which we'll hear on this record. Tony Visconti has gone on and has said that Scary Monsters is the first conscious attempt since Young Americans for David to release something somewhat commercial. Speaking of Tony, not to steal your thunder, but it was co-produced by Tony Visconti. The album was recorded between February and April of 1980. Sessions primarily took place at the Power Station in New York City, with additional recording undergone at Good Earth Studios in London. Much of the same personnel from the prior releases returned for the sessions, with additional guitar work done by none other by Mr. Fripp himself, Robert Fripp, who you might also remember was on Heroes 2 records ago. Interesting enough, there was also a guest appearance by Pete Townsend from The Who. He plays guitar on, I believe on Because You're Young. It'll come to me when we get to that track. This record overall incorporates elements of art rock, new wave, and post-punk. Just a little fun facts background before you get into personnel. Adrian Belew was originally supposed to be on this record. He was even paid in advance, so he was in the books to play on this record. But I guess he comes to find out a little later that the sessions just kind of went on without him. But he got paid, so who cares, right?
Right.
The irony was his replacement was his future employer, which of course, again, is old Frippo pants. But besides Adrian Belew, Tom Verlaine, who is the lead singer and the rhythm guitar player of the band Television, was supposed to provide guitar overdubs for the track Kingdom Come, which is a Tom Verlaine solo song. Verlaine was invited to the studio, and I guess he was just spending way too much time playing around with different guitar amps, and if you're familiar with Television and Tom Verlaine, that's not like a surprise at all. But because he was spending so much time nerding out on tech, nothing was ever recorded. Pianist Roy Bittan, who played last on Station to Station, was in the adjacent studio recording The River with Bruce Springsteen. And so he comes back on this record as well because he was right next door. Why not? And speaking of Bruce Springsteen, in Tony Visconti's autobiography, he recalled the moment where drummer Dennis Davis goes up to Bruce Springsteen and asks him, "What band are you in?" So I thought that was pretty funny. And then one last thing before you get into personnel, I just came across this quote from the man himself, just kind of summarizing his thoughts about this record that we're gonna talk about track by track. By the time of Scary Monsters, the kind of music that I was doing was becoming very acceptable. It was definitely the sound of the early 80s. And that was a quote from David Bowie in 1997, 10 years later. And without getting too into my thoughts, I definitely see this record as opening up the floodgates of what's to come in this decade. But personnel, my guy, take it away.
Two things before personnel. One, I remember Fripp making some kind of comment about the lyrics to Fashion, and it was really funny. And he just said in his own way, he's like, yes, when you hear a line like, "We are the Goon Squad and we're coming to town, beep beep," and I forget what he says, it was just really funny. And I do want to mention that the version of this album that I listened to the most in terms of this this sort of listening session, whatever you want to call it, research, whatever, was the one from the New Career in a New Town box set, which is of course what I listened to Lodger on as well. It's from like what 78 to 82 or something like that. 77 to 82. Anyway,
77 to 80.
I didn't even bother asking you. I was like, I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna just check and see if that there's a new mix or remaster by Tony Visconti. Hey, sure enough, it's in there. So I listened to that version probably the most. So.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that's probably still the most I listened to this record was that box set version.
Yeah.
That we've talked about in every episode, as well as vinyl. So.
Yeah, it's like the Steven Wilson remixes. As soon as there's a version of it like that or a remastered version, at least in the Bowie, as far as the Bowie discography series, as we move forward, I know there's more of them, so I'll probably listen to those versions just because personal tastes, I like the superior sound and just the new mixes always seem to sound really good and fresh. So anyway, that's all I wanted to add to that. So, personnel, my favorite part of the episode here. Of course,
I don't know if that's sarcasm or
not. Of course. Can't you hear me like dripping with enthusiasm? David Bowie on, of course, vocals, synthesizers, mellotron, electric piano, synth bass, sound effects, backing vocals, and of course the saxophone, as he always plays. Dennis Davis, who you just mentioned before, on drums, George Murray on bass, Carlos Alomar on lead and rhythm guitars, a lot of the same people from the last record, Chuck Hammer, guitar synthesizer on Ashes to Ashes and Teenage Wildlife, of course the great Mr. Robert Fripp, Mr. Frippo Pants, lead guitar on a bunch of shit, Roy Bittan on piano, Andy Clark on synthesizer, Pete Townsend, as you mentioned, on guitar on Because You're Young. Tony Visconti actually plays acoustic guitar on both Scary Monsters and Super Creeps and Up the Hill Backwards. Backing vocals, and there's some other backing vocals by Lynn Maitland, Chris Porter, and Michi Hirota, who does the voice on It's No Game #1, which I will be bitching about in just a moment. And production, of course, was done by Bowie and Tony Visconti, and Larry Alexander, Jeff Hendrickson did the engineering, and Peter Mew and Nigel Reeve did the mastering. And that's it. I was very detailed today.
That was very detailed. So we'll get into singles. As always, we'll save bonus songs and B-sides, the obscurities, at the very end. But just want to point out a few singles that were released during this record cycle. Of course, Ashes to Ashes was released as an A-side single, with Move On from Lodger being the B-side. We have Fashion that was released as a single, with Scream Like a Baby being the B-side. Scary Monsters, the title track, was released with Because You're Young as the B-side. In Japan, Up the Hill Backwards was released as an A-side, with a track called Crystal Japan that we'll talk about later. Was released as a B-side. And then another song that was, I'll explain more later, but was recorded during the Lodger series sessions, but was released during the Scary Monsters era. It was a song called Alabama Song. That was the A-side, with the 1979 re-recorded version of Space Oddity on the B-side. So those were all the singles that were released during that era. But unless if you have anything else to add, I say we get into it.
Track by track, #1, sir.
Track by track, here we go. If you are a vinyl person, side 1, track 1, but also track 1 on Spotify, CD, everything else. It's No Game, part 1. Of course, part 1, because there is a part 2 that closes the record. For years, this has been ongoing. I go back and forth with this song. I think you're gonna get into it a little more in a second. I have always found, what was her name? Nishi Hirata, whoever you say her name. I find her vocals annoying, but then there are other times I love it. And I gotta tell you, once I started listening to this record on vinyl, I was like, this track is a jam. I think this song, on David's end at least, vocally incredible. I love the screaming, which I have a feeling you're not gonna like. I love the screaming vocals throughout, intertwined with Robert Fripp's sinister guitar loops. I'm gonna go on record and say I think this might be his most avant-garde song.
You're gonna go on record and say it?
I'm going on record, and I'm interested to, whether you like this track or not, I would be interested to know if you agree with me on
I don't
that.
think you'll be surprised by my answer to that, and that's, I liked... You mentioned Robert Fripp. Like, I'm just gonna save myself a lot of repeating myself. Fripp is amazing on this album. And overall, I think he actually shines more on this than in Heroes, except for maybe the song Heroes, obviously. But I just mean in terms of the whole album.
I agree. We'll get
He's
into that
excellent on this track, but I gotta be 100% honest. This is one of the few times, very few times, that I can think of in the whole Discography series that I've had to just skip a track while listening to this. And it's because of the vocal. It's because of the. It's not even vocals. It's like a lot of the spoken word stuff that she does, and it's not. It just doesn't sound good. You know, it's very jarring and disruptive, and I just don't really like it. So that took a lot away from the track, unfortunately, for me.
Interesting enough, that was intentional.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised to hear that at all. It's just that, and I can respect that to a certain extent. But when it doesn't sound good is when I kind of just sort of draw the line. But I
wanted to...
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, and that's why I wanted to emphasize my appreciation is growing more when listening to it on vinyl.
I might have to give it another spin on vinyl.
It's an annoying song.
Yeah.
There are many aspects of it that make it annoying, and that's why I was kind of also making the point of, I think this is his most avant-garde thing he's done to date. This is almost like Trout Mask Replica levels, in that where it's like, you gotta be in a mood.
Yeah, that could be it too. I might not have been in the mood for it, but it's interesting too that you mentioned that, because you were also saying that there was a conscious effort to be a bit more accessible. Yet it starts out with this song, you know.
The record up.
So it's like, so I don't know, like you know. I think it would be a great song if it wasn't for just those vocals. That's my real, and of course I mean her, not David. Otherwise, yeah, it's just too jarring for me. And again, I like Trout Mask Replica. And I like some kind of jarring music. I just found the vocals kind of annoying, and just my personal taste. That's all, you know. But as you said, again, Fripp, awesome. He was great.
Yeah, I mean, he's just throughout this whole record, like you said, and we'll get into that more. But yeah, I don't know. I'll say it now. This record, at least to date, and maybe overall, might be his best vocals. There are two songs on this record specifically that are in my top 10 favorite David Bowie songs.
I think I know which two, but go ahead.
Both of them are for the same reason, because I think both of these songs have some of his best vocals, if not the very best, and I don't want to reveal that yet. But with this song specifically, whether you like it or not, it's like you gotta like tip your hat off to him. Like his screaming is like Lennon screaming on a plastic band. Like that. What is that type of therapy called? That they did, Yoko Ono and John Lennon. I forget.
Yeah, I don't know.
Getting on a tangent. Primal scream therapy. that's where like that came from. And like that's what his vocals like. I get that like primal scream plastic Ono band feel to it.
It's not, for the record, it's not his vocals I have an issue with on this song at all. It's
okay.
the spoken word stuff that the lady does. That's the stuff that's kind of annoying. It's just jarring to hear somebody kind of, you know, sort of yelling things in the middle of a song like that. You know, not in a way where like David does in the song, but like just over top of it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but you know what I mean.
That makes perfect sense.
It's just a little jarring to me. I'm sorry to say I probably didn't listen to this as much because I did skip over it, because I just, after like the second or third listen, I'm like, all right, I'm just skipping this. I can't do it.
Fair enough. I love it personally. I love the spoken word stuff too, but I could understand why someone wanted. Like I would not counter argue that. But so I'm happy to at least hear that this isn't an African Night Flight situation. It's not Bowie's vocals.
I'm gonna make the statement, for me, weakest opening track since the first album.
Okay.
I mean,
wouldn't argue that either.
Yeah.
You said since the first album?
I'm not counting I'm not counting the first album, like the self-titled.
Since Space Oddity, yes, I would agree.
Yeah, since Space Oddity, yeah. I mean, Space Oddity starts with an amazing track, but you know.
I'll even put Young Americans over this because as we both said in that episode, while we both are just kind of sick and tired of hearing that song, and the cheesy, outdated production also makes it hard to listen to, we both agreed that track is still a great track.
Yeah, and even like even something like Diamond Dogs. I mean, it's biased here because it's my favorite Bowie album, but it starts out with that creepy monologue, which is just such a cool way to start an album, in my opinion. So, but to this, I'll say this: I can appreciate what he was trying to do with this track. I just don't think it works. That's just my opinion.
Fair enough.
So
fair enough. So just a few background information on this track specifically before we move on to the next one is this song was originally called "Tired of Life," and this iteration of the song was demoed as far back as 1970. You'll appreciate this. When recording the guitar part, Bowie asked Fripp to imagine that he was playing a guitar duet with B.B. King, where he had to out B.B. King by doing it his own way.
And I'm sure Fripp, and knowing Robert Fripp, he's probably like, makes perfect sense and did it in one take. That's my guess how it went. Yeah.
He processed, he calculated it in his brain, and he was like, ooh, here you go.
We were talking.
Audio listeners, I was air guitaring.
We were talking about this off camera, and this is all I'm gonna say, so we don't go off on a tangent. If you haven't seen Robert and Toya's Sunday Brunch yet, go do yourself a favor, turn this episode off, go over and just watch that, and just be prepared for some weird stuff. And that's it. Yeah.
That's an understatement. That's an understatement.
It's weirder than this song. Anyway, second track.
But just one more thing.
Okay.
Going back to the spoken word part specifically, this song features lyrics read by Japanese actress. I'm gonna butcher the name. Michi Harita. I know I'm not saying it right. She delivers her performance in what is described by David Buckley in his Bowie autobiography as a macho samurai-like voice. So like I was saying to you before, it was intentional, which was done at Bowie's insistence as a way to break down a particular type of sexist attitude about women.
I really got that vibe from this song.
Look, it's Bowie being ahead of the curve, not even just musically, but on a social level.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's awesome. And yeah, that's really all I have for It's No Game. Let's move on to track 2. So track 2, we have Up the Hill Backwards. I'm gonna actually let you share your thoughts first.
I didn't have a ton of thoughts on this one, to be 100% honest. I thought this was the sort of like average Joe track on the album. I didn't dislike it. It also didn't pop out to me a bunch. But some nice vocals. Sort of, I don't know. It was a bit unremarkable. But it was a vast improvement over the first song. And like, all right, I don't want to spoil my thoughts for this album, but I think there's a problem we've talked about with the sequencing of this album.
I will get to that.
And for lack of a better term, the next several tracks, it's kind of like the I'm gonna use a nice little colorful metaphor here. The album kind of like blows its load all at once, you know, in a certain part of the record, and then
are you trying to get us canceled?
Yes, but the part of the rest of the record suffers a bit, and so for me, the first couple tracks, obviously I didn't really like the first track, but the second track was a little underwhelming, but I still really enjoyed it. I think it could potentially be the grower, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
And go ahead.
No, I was that you opened up a perfect transition in that I was gonna say that this has been my grower.
I could see it.
When I has been my grower, I would say like within the last year, because like we talked about in the larger episode, I've had with this record as well. I've had years with it to just let it, sink in and absorb it, and maybe appreciate things that I didn't appreciate even a year or two ago, let alone 6 years ago when I first heard this record. So this has become my grower. I love this song. It's got this like larger groove like feel to it, especially in the intro. Whereas I would summarize this track as a whole as like a larger meets Young Americans vibe. That bass, man, it's
the
bass
bass
for me for this song. But
really
in addition, the funky guitar solo that comes up in the middle of this track, with these like discordant guitar swoops almost. But the highlight of this track for me is like the last minute or so where the tribal drums kick in, along with Fripp's second, again, funky guitar solo.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking like cat food funky. That's a King Crimson song, by the way. For those of you that haven't listened to the King Crimson discography discussion. But this song is like proto Arcade Fire almost, especially the last 60 seconds. Like, it's just so anthemic, and that's like Arcade Fire's first 3 records right there. So this song, as far as I'm concerned, created that band, and we've talked about that before with Bowie records and songs. And there's going to be a few more on this record where I will also point that out as well. But I love this song.
Oh, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
I'm just saying I love this song, and I think it's especially coming off of It's No Game, a great track to follow in the sense of like, okay, I don't know what I just heard with that first song, but like, this is like, okay, this is a jam.
I should state that my experience with this record is certainly heard it more than the last couple records. I own it on vinyl. I've listened to it just kind of on and off over the years. It's not one I ever had on heavy rotation. So some of the lesser known tracks I am not as familiar with, and this is one of them. So I've heard it quite a few times. I just haven't heard it in years. So, but it didn't. Again, it was good. I could potentially seeing it be kind of a grower as I listened to this album more and more, but it just didn't quite stand out for me.
Okay, fair enough.
But still good. I mean, again, Bowie's. I should state this. I'm sure we've said this before. Bowie's mediocre is like better than
everyone else's best.
Yeah, many other people's or artists' best. So that's. And I mean, let's be real. I mean, I don't know if you have anything else to say about this, but the next 3 tracks 4 tracks, whatever you want to say.
Before we get there, before
Yeah.
we hype that up, the one thing I will add to this song, especially since my favorite thing about it is the rhythm section, hands down, as I just pointed out.
Yeah, that's like Lodger. The rhythm section is flawless
Killer.
on this album. Yeah, I should say that too.
With this track specifically, the rhythm section took inspiration from Joy Division. Dennis Davis's drum performance has actually been compared to She's Lost Control before, so there was some inspiration there. Unknown Pleasures would have came out the year before, and Closer would be coming out the same very year. So definitely like some Joy Division vibes as well, which I'm a pretty big fan of those first 2 records by them. Are you ready to get into track 3?
I'm totally ready.
The title track, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. So, whereas I mentioned with the last track, that song was like a very like proto Arcade Fire vibe, at least that I get. With this song, there are times where I get a proto Pixies vibe, and there are times where I get a proto 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah, like industrial. Yeah.
It's a very industrial sounding. Predates industrial music actually by like a year or 2. But like with the robotic vocals and the chorus as well, it's very 9 Inch Nails. And vocally, I just can't get Black Francis, the singer of the Pixies, out of my head whenever I listen to this song. And the irony with that actually is there are great performances that Bowie does of this song with Black Francis from the Pixies for his 50th birthday. That was a great show, by the way, if you haven't watched that. And there's a great performance that he does with 9 Inch Nails as well, actually. So, referencing both of those bands, both of those versions are great. You have to check out. This fucking song.
I know. And this has always been one of my absolute favorite Bowie songs. I'd say
Same.
top 10 at least for me. It's everything. It's the vocals. It's that percussion. It's that, like you said, distorted vocals. What's that, like the do 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 do? That's weird kind of sound. And Robert Fripp's guitar playing is just, it's like it reminds me of like the best of the heaviest King Crimson stuff.
Yes.
Like it could be this could be like Wetton, Bruford era King Crimson playing. And what's interesting about it is that long before I was a fan of King Crimson or knew who Robert Fripp was, when I first got into David Bowie, and this was when I got around when I first got into music, I had a Best of Bowie. And the edited version of this song was, the single edit or whatever version, was on that Best of Bowie collection. And I remember the guitar just, back then, way before I knew who a lot of, famous great guitar players were. I remember just going, who is playing this guitar? It just has such a sound, like I was blown away by the guitar playing. And I think it's some of Fripp's best guitar work in his entire career. Like, I think the stuff he does in this song is phenomenal. Coupled with Bowie's vocals, that deep register he goes for, it's got a vibe to it. It's excellent.
And Fripp's guitar, I agree, is what stands out hands down.
Yeah.
You are opening segues for me tonight, which I appreciate.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Because you said something very interesting to me that stood out. That you said that you think this is one of his best guitar solos.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you that I think it's in his top 3. Overall.
Yeah, I could see it.
In everything he's done, Crimson, any other session work that he's done. I mean, he's done session work for Talking Heads, for Brian Eno, David Bowie, obviously. The list just goes on and on. And just a quick Fripp story that ties into this what we're talking about with this track is about a week ago. I'm a big fan of Mark Maron's WTF podcast, and he just had on James Murphy from LCD Sound System on, and Mark was asking James about influences and stuff, and they got on about the discussion with Prague, and that's a whole separate thing. But Fripp does get mentioned, and Maron's got some funny stories about Fripp. But the one thing that was interesting that James Murphy said was the thing with Fripp is, on one hand, he's like a hero for me. He's one of my musical heroes. But then on another hand, I get frustrated with him. And he's like, the thing with Fripp is such a musical genius. But the problem that I have with some of his work with King Crimson is he'll push to the point where there's no one telling him to stop. Moonchild comes to mind. Providence comes to mind. He's like, my favorite Robert Fripp work is the stuff that he does with other people.
Yeah.
Fripp is a musical genius, but when he works with somebody like Bowie, who is just like this musical chameleon director, when he's working with someone else that can be like, all right, Robert, that's enough, bring it down, that's when you get his best work. And I agree with a lot of that.
And that applies to King Crimson too. Like, I think in a lot of ways, like the next album he would do with King Crimson, I think the addition of Adrian Belew really curtailed, and the direction they went with it, and probably he learned a lot from people like Bowie and Eno and stuff like that. But when Fripp's kind of contained, when you contain the beast, you kind of get a lot of real good stuff, or the right lineup of Crimson. There's the ego's got to be balanced a little.
Yeah, and I agree with that. When, like you said, when someone's containing him, and with that disciplined lineup, you had someone like Adrian Belew, who also has an ego like Robert Fripp. Difference being big extrovert. So contrast with him and Fripp, again, bringing him down. Like, okay. Calm down, Fripp.
I think we talked about it in the King Crimson. I think it was like when they record a beat or something. We're getting off track, but there was a point where Adrian Belew was literally like, "Get out of the studio." So you need somebody like that,
You do, and I think in Fripp's case, his best work is brought out that way.
But yeah, this is and as far as Bowie tracks, it rivals. Heroes is so iconic. It's really hard to put it over Heroes, because that tone and just what he does on that track. But I'd say objectively, Heroes is the better. It is the better track, but I like what he does on this song. This is my favorite, like, Bowie Fripp moment personally. Is Scary Monsters.
This song gives me like a similar feeling to what a song like One More Red Nightmare.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
Interesting enough, I haven't listened to it yet. I'm gonna check it out though. He apparently, in the 90s with Reeves Gabrel, who we'll talk about when we get to the second half of Bowie's career, does a almost like a Johnny Cash acoustic like rendition of this song that I gotta check it out. I didn't get to check it out on time for this episode, but coming off of what we just talked about with this track, to hear a version of it that could not be any more than different has me intrigued.
We talked a lot about Fripp. I do want to mention that the other two things that really pop out to me are, of course, David's vocals. I love his vocal delivery and his, I love the low Bowie voice. I've always been a fan of that. And the drums, actually. Those kind of crashing sort of, they really help give that industrial kind of sound to it. Those sort of, I don't know how to describe that sound.
How about too, and it's something I just picked up on recently, listening to this on vinyl, the robotic effects
Yeah.
that you hear during the chorus. Like, how did they get this sound in 1980?
I know. It doesn't sound... It sounds more, like you said, something you'd hear in, like, the mid-90s or something. And there's a line from the song that always sticks with me. She asked for my love, but I gave her a dangerous mind. I had that as a quote a long time ago on a... I think it was like MSN Messenger or something. I don't know. That line always sticks out to me for some reason. So I like the lyrics,
That's
too.
awesome. Lyrically, the song is great.
It's
Which
just
actually,
nice.
that was the one last thing I wanted to bring up was I've been mentioning these records. I think I mentioned them all throughout the Berlin episodes. Why I love this song so much is this is the closest thing sounding like to The Idiot and Lust for Life, those first two Iggy records that Bowie co-wrote those songs for and produced during the Berlin period. But the best way I could describe those two records is it's a bunch of scary monsters and super creeps. With some upbeat stuff too, but like that's like just the best comparison I can make. But can we please move on to track 4?
Yes. Yeah.
The award to best sequel in anything goes to this next track.
Wait, in anything, Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, so you beat me to it. I was gonna say this is his Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, he's gonna let me get to the punchline. It's my cheesy joke, but that's okay. That's okay. This song.
Love the song. Yeah.
So.
Again, though, what I was saying about this album blowing its load too soon. I mean, you already have. You got Scary Monsters, and you follow it up with Ashes to Ashes.
And 2 bangers.
I know.
Coming up next. This song from, and I'm going to emphasize this when I talk about another track in a few minutes, but with this song from start to finish is my favorite vocal performance of his. It's my favorite.
I also really love this song, vocally, and I love everything about this song. I love the atmosphere of it. I love the lyrics, the vocals, the instrumentation. It's a perfect song.
This song is perfect. It's with just those keyboard synth flourishes throughout. There are times it's very hazy sounding. There are times it's very psychedelic.
It's kind of got that funky sort of thing going on a little bit too, you know. The bass, the way the bass.
It's punky, but what I think this song does is it encapsulates everything he did in the 70s into one pop song.
I could see that, yeah. Yeah, he's got the...
everything he's done so far.
Yeah, because it's got a bit of a glam feel, and it even obviously references Space Odyssey's first hit, and it's got the, like I was saying, the funkiness, like Young Americans. It's got the synthy sort of thing that he did with the Berlin trilogy. Yeah, I think you're right, yeah.
This song is perfect. I'm gonna make a bold statement here. I think this is his A Day in the Life. This is his Good Vibrations. This song is just perfect. And I don't even know what to compare it to. I have in my notes, the only thing I could compare this track to is to the Talking Heads' Remain in Light. That's like the closest comparison.
Even so, it's still different, you know. I know what you mean, yeah.
But it's just stylistically, it's all over the place. But again, it works because it captures everything he's done, and that's just the theme and the vibe I get with this record overall. This is a very retrospective and introspective record at the same time. And this song, I think, is the centerpiece to all of that.
Yeah, this is... Again... Sorry to complain about the sequencing, but... The only thing I wonder is the placement. Is if it's too soon... Like, I'd almost... Maybe not end the record with it, but... I don't know. just to follow it up with Scary Monster from Scary Monsters, you know, that's like, I mean, I love it, but it's also like, I don't know.
It's almost like it's not fair.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, absolutely. It's just not fair.
Because you have this one song which is incredible, borderline a masterpiece, and then you're following along with the masterpiece, as far as I'm concerned, at least. It's like, it's not fair.
I've always considered them two of the greatest Bowie songs, and they're both close. I don't know, like, I don't know personally which one of those two I would pick. I've always loved them. They were always right next, or right, you know, aligned with each other, right on the best of, because they go by album. So it's like, I'm used to hearing these songs together, and I'm like, ugh, these are both so good, you know.
It's not fair.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. And this has got the sci-fi vibe, which I love, and you know, like the fact that it's a sequel to kind of paying homage to his first big hit in a way, you know. You know, and like you said, it's a really good way to bookend his sort of 70s period.
It really is, and I'm glad you brought up, you know, Space Oddity and you know, paying a homage to that, because if you will, there's a section in the book that I highlighted that I wanted to read specifically that ties these two tracks together that I just thought was interesting. And this is from the Nicholas Pegg book. If Space Oddity was in part a metaphor of space travel as celebrity, as drug taking, as sensory isolation, then Ashes to Ashes represents the payoff.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to put it.
The action man who has fallen so low might well parallel the former main man whose music went from funk to funky in 1975 as he became a junkie in the city of angels, strung out in heaven's high, before hitting the depths during the man who fell to earth. I ain't got no money and I ain't got no hair, and relocating to Europe for creative and spiritual rebirth, hitting an all-time low. So again, lyrically, we are going through this timeline of everything that's happened to this man via his other records in this song.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
This song, to me, to just kind of wrap up our thoughts on this, is more than any other track on this record, to me, is him taking everything he learned from the Berlin trilogy, and applying it into one song. That's this track.
Yeah, I could see, with influences from his other periods.
With adding on,
yeah,
you know, the rest of his career thus far.
And this song could kind of fit cozily, I think, in most of the other records. I know that's a weird statement to make, but
that's interesting. I don't know if I would entirely agree
in
with
some
that,
of them,
but...
you know, in some of them, like I could see it fitting in something like Aladdin Sane, or you know, that period. But anyway, but yeah, we've gushed about this track a lot.
We've gushed about it enough. The only final quick anecdote
we both love it.
is we both love it, and interesting enough, and I am going to check it out after this recording, is Tears for Fears apparently did a cover of this.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I love Tears for Fears. I have a soft spot for them, so I would be interested to hear their cover of this track. But track 5, which closes side 1. And it's like, now we're hitting 3 in a row.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not fair, you know. It's like I said. I have an interesting thing. This is my grower track.
Fashion.
But it's not. I have 2 grower tracks in this, because this Fashion is my, over the many years of listening to Bowie, grower track, because I've listened to that greatest hits many times over the years, and I've revisited it many times, and of course I've listened to this album too. And I hated this song when I first heard it. Couldn't stand this song. I used to skip it. I thought the lyrics were really dorky. But over time, I've just grown to love this song. I don't know what it is about it. It's just, it's like it's pop. It's definitely a pop song, but it's just a little too weird to be like a mainstream pop song. You know what I mean? It's just a little too weird. Just the whole sound of it. It's like a, I don't know. I'll let you go ahead.
I was gonna say what I love about this song is David's sense of humor, his intellectual sense of humor. I want to add that in. Really shines in this song because on the surface, this is very poppy sounding, but on the surface, you would think like that's like what the song is about, like fashion, and to a degree, it kind of is. But it's also Bowie poking fun at how ridiculous the fashion world is, while at the same time there's more underlining themes going on. He is critiquing something like fascism while also just critiquing politics in 1980 with the line, turn to the left, turn to the right. Mm-hmm. He's literally calling both sides of the political spectrum out. So there's humor, there's intellect in this, what is hands down the poppiest track off this record.
Yeah. You could tell it was meant to be sort of the hit single. But it's also, again, too weird. A little too weird to be a pop hit. You know?
I listened to this song, and this is almost what I wish Young Americans sounded like.
You know, I didn't think of that myself, but I agree. Remember we were saying in that episode that he needed to Bowify Young Americans more? That's Bowifying funk right there.
100%.
That would have been if Young Americans had that sound, I would probably like it a lot more.
I love this song. This has always been one of my favorites of the record. I almost feel like this, to me, sounds like a precursor to Talking Heads speaking in tongues.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get that vibe. And we always talk about how Bowie's always a couple years ahead.
Yeah.
And even with this record, his contemporaries, they're doing Berlin-era influenced Bowie, whereas Bowie's moved on to this sound, and then by the time Talking Heads get to this sound 3 years from now, Bowie's moved on from this sound. So he's always ahead of the curve, and I think this record's no exception to that. I've mentioned before the Celebration Band with Mike Garson. He oversees that. They did like a Zoom concert earlier this year, and he does a great cover of this song with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It's well worth checking out. But yeah, I think this is a great track. The only other thing I really have to add to it is, to me, the "Don't Talk to Me" lines both reflect Bowie's shifting fortunes as a celebrity demagogue, almost. Also reflecting on this like guru persona that the media has given to him. Especially during this era of his career. And these themes kind of get touched upon on the next track as well. So,
the only thing I have to add is we are the Goon Squad and we're coming to town.
It's my favorite line of this.
Beep, beep.
And then beep, beep.
The guitar is so good.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's Carlos Alomar or if that's Fripp. It doesn't sound very Frippish. I'm guessing it's him.
It does sound more like Carl's.
Yeah.
But ready to move on to side two?
What a side one, huh?
So and you've been saying this all throughout, and I'm gonna get to my feelings about that in a minute. But side one, we can both agree, is just front loaded.
Oh, it's totally, yeah. I would say aside from the first track, personally, it's a great first side. Even like I think the second track's a really good song too. You know.
Yeah, but this is where the teasing comes in.
Yeah.
Because this is my favorite song off the record.
This song, I would say, is right up there with that. Again, it is front loaded, but see, these days, I mean, I know you listen to it on vinyl, but when you're listening to it on Spotify, or if you were to listen to a CD version, this next song is clumped in with the last three. So again, you have another, to me, I agree, to me, another excellent song.
And yeah, and that's a good point. And because listening to this on vinyl, it makes it a bigger tease because this is my favorite track. It starts, it opens side 2, and then for me, I actually like the next track, but after that, the record dips, and it really dips.
Yeah, it's agreed.
We'll get there in a second, but this was the song I was alluding to when I was talking about Ashes to Ashes. So saying Ashes to Ashes from start to finish is my favorite Bowie vocal performance, but there's a section in this song specifically that is my favorite Bowie vocal performance.
His vocals are great in this song. I love it.
They from start to finish, they're incredible. But there's the one section that you fall to the ground like a leaf. For that part, the middle part of the song, it's my favorite vocal performance by him.
It's almost unfair to the song that Scary Monsters and Ashes to Ashes and them are on this album, because I think this is an overlooked one. This was my grower, actually, just being one of the tracks I knew a little less. And I found the more I was listening to it, the more I was enjoying this track. I agree, those vocals are excellent.
They really are.
And,
like I said, that one section specifically.
Yeah.
And this is one of his longer songs. This is the longest track I think he's recorded since Station to Station.
There's also a moment in the song where Fripp just soars with that guitar. And that sealed the deal for me. I was like, holy shit, that guitar he's just on fire. I loved it.
It's another favorite Fripp song that I would put up there as well. This is almost like the heroes of this record. Like this track, I've always compared this song to Heroes. They're similar songs to me, as far as his vocals, again, Fripp, and even just the production. I've always compared this one and Heroes, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it now. This has always been my favorite song over the two that we're talking about. And I'll tell you right now, this track is in my top 10 favorite Bowie songs.
Wow.
So,
very nice.
We'll have to stay tuned for where it's placed exactly. But
it's quite a lineup of those four songs. I think are very, very good.
This and Ashes to Ashes are in my top 10.
But again, I don't want to spoil the rest of the record either. But to be honest, it's like spread the songs out differently, you know? Because I agree. Like I think it sounds like we're kind of, except maybe the first song or two, we're kind of, I'm guessing, on the same page. But it does, it's like it peaks early and then just kind of drops off. That's how I feel. But we can get to the next one if you want to.
Yeah, we'll get to there in a second. I did just want to add a couple things about this track. We talked about Fripp. I think the feeling in Fripp's guitar playing, especially that solo that we just talked about, it's like the most emotion that he's ever displayed on the guitar. And this is coming from a very technically proficient player. Incredible stuff. My second and final Arcade Fire comparison I will make. This is the other track that I very much get Arcade Fire vibes from. Again, the anthemic sound especially. They get compared to U2 a lot. I'm like, no. Stop comparing them to U2. They are like, they heard Scary Monsters, Super Creeps, and that's what put that band together. as far as I'm concerned. This song is very introspective. He is ruthlessly picking himself apart in this song as far as his status and the trend-setting benchmark that he's known for. And now it's kind of backfiring a little bit with the line, I feel like a group of one, where he's explaining and sort of dismissing the new wave boys. I think specifically he's taking a jab at Gary Newman. And with the line, same old thing and brand new drag, he's literally renouncing the unwanted status of this like sort of like role model that he's developed for this next generation, this new wave of music that's about to come. He has said that he thinks this is one of his favorite, or one of his best tracks he's ever written. There's a line I pulled from the liner notes of one of many compilation records where he says that I would give you 2 modern loves anytime for this song. Basically just saying that, like, you know, like, this song just blows that track off the ground. And I love Modern Love, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool quote. Yeah, this song is a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. It's, like I said, my favorite off the record. Spoiler alert.
How could you spoil it?
I know. But Scream Like a Baby.
Now I want to.
Can you stop screaming like a baby?
I actually think this song's pretty good.
I do too. This is for me where the record. So Teenage Wildlife peaked.
And it's starting to go down a little, yeah.
It starts to go down here. Having said that, I do love this song, but this is the last song that I love on this record. I love that riff right in the beginning. So sinister.
Yeah, it's cool.
Fripp with that red era guitar tone.
Oh yeah, he's got great tone on this album. Really great.
He really does, and it works for every track. Stylistically different these songs are. Fripp's sinister tone works for all of these songs.
He kind of, it could be, I admit bias here because I'm a huge King Crimson fan, huge Fripp fan. His playing really elevates the album as a whole, I think. Even the weaker tracks. Like I said, even something like the first track that I didn't like, the guitar stood out. And in this track, I agree, it's got that sinister, dark, sort of heavy sound that he's known for, and I love it. So good.
Yeah, I would say that he's again the highlight of this track. The other thing I had in my notes is I love the like schizophrenic robot vocals.
Yeah.
At the tail end of the
I like
song.
it too, yeah.
I was back and forth. I was like, is he gonna like that? Is he?
No, yeah, I really liked this, and there's one other song that on this part of the record, which I'll talk about, that I really liked, actually. So.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like same for you. I don't really have anything else to add to this track other than I like it. This is where the record kind of ends for me. I just think it's a great track. This song was originally, this is another track that was recycled, by the way. This was originally a song called I Am a Laser, which we did talk about. We talked about it. I don't remember if it was the Aladdin Sade or Diamond Dogs episode. But this was another recycled song. And, yeah, I just, I think it's a cool track. It fits with this record for sure. That's all I've got.
Yeah, same.
So, let's move on because maybe we can breeze through these last 3 tracks.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah, this is where, like I said, the record dips for me, and it dips pretty significantly. This was the after-mentioned Tom Verlaine cover that we talked about, Kingdom Come. This was his first cover that he's done since Wild as the Wind from Station to Station. And
I'd never heard the original version, I just want to put that out there.
The original version is nothing to run home about. It's the better of the two. If you want to get into Tom Verlaine, check out Television. But Yeah, I don't know. We've talked about this before. Bowie's vocals are either incredible or they're just not that great, and this one for me leans more towards the not so great.
He just can't do covers. Like, he shouldn't do covers.
Well, he can and he can't. That's the
yeah.
thing. Because I think of songs like Wild is the Wind and My Death, and that counters that argument.
Yeah, I guess that's true,
Like,
yeah.
Across the Universe, then I'm like, maybe he is right. So it's one extreme or the other.
Yeah, there's a lot more misses than hits, I think, though.
That I would agree with.
This song isn't bad. I'll say this isn't bad. It's just very mediocre. That's what I would say. And when you have already heard the tracks before it, you're like, what happened? You know?
Yeah.
And like you said, it kind of kills the vibe of the record for me. So I would agree. It's just, eh.
I agree. And along with track 9, Because You're Young, hands down my least favorite track off.
Actually, I thought of this last part, or excuse me, this last batch of songs. I actually like this song probably more than the previous one and the next one. There's a bit of that sort of dark tone to it that I really like.
Sure.
And I actually think his vocals are pretty good. So actually, I think this one could potentially be my sort of grower. If I give this, actually, if I listen to this a little bit more, because it was like the last listen or two, I was starting to really like it.
You mentioned the vocals with this track specifically, and I do have in my notes. I love the one line in the song, "The pieces are broken."
Yeah.
Yeah. That's always been my favorite.
I think it's strong. I think at least this is stronger than Kingdom Come and Ain't No Game Part 2.
Okay.
That's, but there is this, I think this song has, I think I'm going to listen to it a little bit more, because I think this one could actually move up a little bit for me.
I think it's not a bad song per se.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is, again, after you're coming off Side 1 and Teenage Wildlife.
Yeah, it's the sequencing. The sequencing is this album's Achilles heel. That's the problem.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. The only other thing I'm going to add to this song, so we can move on to the closing track, is apparently the song was dedicated to his son, Duncan, while also coming off to the themes that were addressed at Teenage Wildlife, in that not wanting to be, again, being the guru for the up-and-coming Generation X bands that were coming. So, but that's Because You're Young. Get it? Because You're Young. There you go. Track 10, the closing track. It's No Game Part 2.
Way better than Part 1, but very mediocre. That's my thoughts.
It is the best way to sum it. It's just mediocre, right? While I think it's a good way to close the record, I've checked out at this point.
Yeah, same.
Completely checked out. I like Part 1 better, obviously. But the one interesting thing about this track is, I was reading in the Nicholas Pegg book, is in contrast to the music and the vocal intensity of Part 1, obviously Part 2 is much calmer, but Carr and Murray interpreted this as the meaning that by the album's close, Bowie is facing the same situation which he confronted when the album began, and that's a line taken from the track. But with the force of his rage somewhat spent. So he's sounding very pissed off in Part 1, but in Part 2, at least, while things haven't improved, he's taking it a little better than he did in, Part 1. I thought that was a cool way of the rhythm section kind of, when thinking of their instrumental parts, thinking of approaching this song. So I thought that was kind of cool. But, yeah, what an underwhelming way to end the record.
Yeah, it just tapers off.
It works as a closer, but again, because we just came off of these other two tracks that were also extremely underwhelming. Yeah, I checked out.
I will be honest, and I did listen to this album maybe once or twice without listening to the big hitters, just to really try to give the other tracks, I don't know, just try to give them a good chance, without, you know what I mean, without trying to, and I think that's why I was able to appreciate something like, Jesus, I'm blanking out on the name, Because You're Young, because I've heard Scary Monsters a million times, I've heard Fashion and Ashes to Ashes, and I did skip the first track as well, just because of that vocal, but I really wanted to give these other tracks, their due, and even doing that, only a couple songs, Teenage Wildlife popped out, obviously. I think that's right up there with the big heavy hitters. But even that, some of these other tracks just still weren't doing anything for me. So, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of a bummer. And
Yeah.
That kind of sounded like your final thoughts.
No, not really. Close.
No, all right, so then
Close, yeah.
We'll get there in a second then. So before getting into final thoughts, let's just breeze through bonus tracks and our top three.
Okay, so you listened to the bonus tracks. I did not. Just clarification.
Yes. As per usual, Rob didn't do his homework. However, I will say, hold on, before Mr. Jumpy Pants. I will say it's my fault this time. I texted him these tracks this morning. I was like, hey, forgot to send these to you. Check them out if you can. If you can't, I get it. I dropped the ball. So I will admit that it was my fault. But, I mean, come on. What have you done it either way? Probably not.
I think I told you that even.
You did. So, a couple bonus tracks. These are available on the Rico Disc editions of these albums that were released in the early 90s, as well as the A New Career in a New Town box as well, box set. We have a 1979 re-recorded acoustic version of Space Oddity. They were, prior to this record coming out, Bowie was telling people in the press, he wrote this, sequel to Space Oddity, so RCA Records was really trying to capitalize on that. So he got pressured into re-recording Space Oddity. It was released as a single in 1979, actually, in anticipation for Ashes to Ashes. It's not great. It's not worth checking out. Stick to the original. Never was a fan of this version. For whatever reason, David felt the need to also re-record Panic in Detroit, a song that you and I have expressed that we're not really the biggest fan of.
It's okay.
It's okay. This version, on the other hand, is not okay. Stick to the Aladdin Sane version. But these next two tracks are great, and they're worth talking about for a minute here. We have a song called Crystal Japan, which was used as a Japanese commercial around this time when Scary Monsters came out. However, it was originally meant to close Scary Monsters, and I wish this song closed the record. Crystal Japan it's an ambient piece in the vein of Low and Heroes, those ambient tracks.
I should have listened to that.
While I'm not gonna tell you it's better than any of those songs, it's still freaking great. And coming off of the retrospective and introspective themes of this record, I think Crystal Japan would have been a fitting way to close the album, as opposed to It's No Game Part 2. You will like it. You would really like it.
I'm going to listen to it after this, actually.
Those ambient pieces. And then the other song that's worth talking about is a song called Alabama Song. And we kind of talked about this song before, because he performed this song live on the Isolar 2 tour. And there's a great live version of it. The song is a cover. I don't remember who covered our...
It's not that Doors song, is it? And the Doors could be...
the Doors did cover it. It's not a Doors
Okay,
original.
so yeah. It's a cover by the Doors, yeah.
But it is... His version is more loosely based on the Doors version. This song is a trip. It is so weird. I love it. I don't know why it didn't make its way to this record. Technically, it was recorded during the larger sessions, but this song would not be out of place.
So instead of Kingdom Come, put that cover on there. There you go.
Yes, absolutely. So if all else, Crystal Japan and Alabama song. Check those two.
I'm actually gonna probably check both of those out. So
awesome. You want to get into top 3?
Yeah, we can. Would you like me to go first? Would you like to go first?
Go first.
I think I wouldn't doubt if we had the same top 3 personally, and I'll say mine in order. Scary Monsters, Ashes to Ashes, Teenage Wildlife. I'm sure your order's different, but those are my 3.
Yes and no. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Because I've got Ashes to Ashes and I'm sorry. I do have Ashes to Ashes as number 1. With Teenage Wildlife being my very close number 2. Again, I mentioned both of these songs are in my overall top 10. So that'd be my 1 and 2, and just barely, I gotta put Fashion at number 3 with Scary Monsters being right under.
I thought you were gonna say
Scream Like a Baby.
something like that, and I was gonna be like,
it's no game.
I'm like, okay, this is over. You know, it's no game part. Yeah. No, Fashion's a great. I mean, that's a great pick. Totally.
It's like I said, the title track is a very, very close number.
I thought for a minute that the 3 big songs were gonna be my 3, but I think Teenage Wildlife really won me over.
It
was very good.
It's like the best comparison I can make is it's like the what's that song called? It's the sweet thing of this record. In that, like, there are so many great tracks on Diamond Dogs, obviously, but then you get to that song and you're like, what is this? Yes. Why does nobody talk about this song?
I know,
that's how I feel about Teenage Wildlife.
Fair. Yeah, I think I can totally agree with your list. Fashion would have been my number 4, obviously.
So there you go. So we would reverse that.
Scary Monsters, the song, is probably far and away my favorite.
Okay.
And I remember hoping, first time I heard this album, hoping that the record sounded like it, because it sounds different than the rest of the album, I think. Ashes to Ashes too, really.
See, I would give that to Ashes to Ashes. I think all these songs are like very different, right? But I think Ashes to Ashes for me stands out as that song.
Both of those songs, I think, sound very different. They even sound different from each other, and it's weird they're on the same album. But anyway, those are my 3.
So you were right in that same songs, different order, but we should start top 4.
Yeah, pretty much. 3. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So I'm gonna go ahead and give my final thoughts, and you are too, but I'll just tease it now. We've got a little surprise that we're gonna throw out.
Well, Andy has a surprise.
I do, yes. I got a little surprise, which I'm gonna predict now is gonna make this hands down the longest Bowie episode. I'm making that prediction now.
Okay.
But all right. So my final thoughts on this record. We've been saying this all throughout. This album is just, for me at least, tracks 1 through 7 front loaded. So that's It's No Game Part 1 to Scream Like a Baby. I know your opinion might differ a little bit as far as
it's going to,
songs,
yeah.
But we both do agree that it's front loaded.
Yeah.
For sure. If this record were just those first 7 tracks, it'd be a short record, it'd be a half-hour long. It would be my 3rd favorite Bowie album. It really would be. I love these first 7 songs. I think they're all from near perfect to perfect. But those last 3 tracks
drag it down,
really dip this album. again, I think this is both his most introspective and retrospective record for at least some time. I would argue the last two records as well he put out. But going off of the final lyric in It's No Game Part 2, the best way I can summarize Scary Monsters is what it really does is in the final words of the final track, draw the blinds on yesterday. That summarizes this record, which may be one of my favorite lines in any song, by the way. But that's how I feel about this record. Overall, this should be a 4.5 out of 5-star record, but because of those last three songs, it brings it down to a 4-star for me, which is unfortunate.
First of all, I thought your final thoughts were really good. Our opinion is similar but different enough, I think, on this one. I think I would agree with most of what you said, except I wasn't as big of a fan of particularly the first track, and the second track was a bit mediocre for me. To me, the sweet spot is like Scary Monsters 2. I could agree with you that Scream Like a Baby would be maybe like the step down, maybe 2 steps down, and then it really dips. The biggest problem this album has is sequencing. I think if it was sequenced well, take a track or 2 out. I haven't heard those bonus tracks, but if they're as good as you are, take 2 of the tracks out or something and put those 2 in. You resequence the record, I'd even be fine with, one song that isn't quite as good, but sequenced well. Might even do favors to that song. I love the overall sound of it. I think we didn't give enough credit to, we talked a bit about it, to the rhythm section, as always, amazing. The whole band is wonderful. And I think Robert Fripp really is the star of the show to me.
I blame Fripp as the reason why we didn't give enough credit to the rest of the band.
Yeah, fair. And some of my favorite moments vocally and lyrically by Bowie, I would say. So yeah, I think if this was just resequenced and perhaps, like I said, take a couple songs out, add a couple things in, even honestly just trim down and resequence, like you said, if the album was only like 33 minutes long or something, but just resequenced with a few of the duds out, that might be enough, honestly.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Well, before I get there, go ahead.
I'm going to be a contrarian and just say, out of 10, because you do 4 out of 5, I would give it like a, it should be like, this should be a 9 out of 10, 4.5 out of 5, whatever you want to say. I'm going to give it like a, I'm going to give it like a 7.5. 8, maybe 8. It's teetering towards 8, but there's too many duds in it, the duds.
So if we round to your 8,
yeah,
that would be my equivalent to my 4 out of 5.
It's maybe a little less. Yeah, so I'll say 7.5. Yeah.
A little less. Like you're kind of like in that like in between 3.5, 4 spectrum. But that tells me that overall we're on the same page with this record.
Yeah, just a couple, maybe like I think our big difference is I just hate that first track, but otherwise that's about it. Yeah.
As I said, my sweet spot is tracks 1 through 7. It sounds like more for you would be tracks 3 through 7.
And so put Because You're Young on there. That song's growing on me. I think you should give that one another shot too. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's funny that you have been mentioning the sequencing with this record throughout, because it just so happens, if our OG fans are familiar, we did this in the Crimson series. I decided to resequence this record.
Wow, we actually did it. So.
I did it.
Well, you did it. I didn't do anything.
You didn't do it. I did it. This could not have been any more last minute. But I was thinking about it, and I was just like, you know what? Again, this record's so front-loaded, but then I just lose my interest in that last 1/3. There's a better record here. So I took it upon myself to resequence it. I based my resequence from a Tony Visconti quote in the Nicholas Pegg book. The Scary Monster chapter ends with this quote where he says, I decided that as I was finishing, the mastering of this record, David and I were talking, and we both really felt that this was our Sgt. Pepper. I thought that was an interesting quote. I took that and I said, you know what? Instead of his Sgt. Pepper, I'm going to make this into his Abbey Road. And I'm going to approach this as his Abbey Road for 2 reasons. One, because this is ending an era as far as his career goes. But also, this is ending his collaboration with Tony Visconti for like 20, 25 years. So I had an Abbey Road mindset with the sequencing of this record.
Also, Abbey Road's the better Beatles album, but that's a different story.
That is a different discussion, debate, story. Stay tuned. But it is one of my favorite albums of all time. So, I'll tell you right off the bat, I eliminated It's No Game Part 2, Because You're Young, and Kingdom Come. So the last 3 tracks, they're gone. Took them out. I've been throwing the words introspective and retrospective a lot throughout this episode, to the point where my side 1 I have titled as the introspective side, and my side 2 is the retrospective side. So introspective, he's sort of reevaluating his career thus far. And that's really how I approached my side 1 to this record. Now I will say, we talked about how front-loaded this album is. You can make the argument that my resequencing of this, my side 1's front-loaded as well. But that was intentional, because while I wanted to maintain that in my timeline, Bowie was still trying to go for a more accessible record, I approached my side 2 similar to how I approached my side 2 to our Perfect Beat sequence. My side 2, the retrospective side, it's looking back at your career, retrospective, but also I'm gonna challenge your ears with this side 2. This is gonna be like my most experimental, because I'm going full pop on the next album. So that's how I approached my side 2. So side 1, the introspective side, is the poppier side. Side 2, the retrospective side, is the more challenging avant-garde side. So I'm opening the record with Ashes to Ashes. We are at RCA Records. We are capitalizing on Space Oddity.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
We are opening it with, you are getting the sequel. We are opening with Part 2, the better of the 2, best sequel ever, Ashes to Ashes. I think this song works as an opener.
Yeah, I thought you'd have to go with a big one for the opener.
We are going big. We are going poppy. But again, this is clearly Bowie. This is clearly still really out there. I think this is the way to open the record. So I'm opening with Ashes to Ashes, and then I love the 1-2 punch approach when it comes to sequencing. So I'm going right with Fashion, just like on the original track listing. I love the transition from the end of Ashes to Fashion, and I'm keeping it in my track listing. Again, that 1-2 punch. So I've got Ashes to Ashes and then Fashion. Now we're bringing it down with track 3, and we're gonna go right into Up the Hill backwards. I love the tribal drums in the beginning and coming off of the end of Fashion. I think it's a great transition. So a little bit of palate cleanser, a little bit of a hey, new wave, what's to come. So Up the Hill Backwards is my track 3, and then I'm ending my side 1 with Teenage Wildlife. This track is very introspective, so I think it's a very climactic way to end the introspective side of my sequencing of this.
Pretty interesting that you have a good portion of the first side on your first side, plus the first song of the second side. So yeah, it fits pretty good.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great way to end it. And then side 2, which is my retrospective side. Now I'm throwing you off, and we're going to challenge you, and we're going to challenge you right with It's No Game Part 1. Only I have it titled as It's No Game, but it's just Part 1. So we're opening up side 2 with this. What the fuck is this song? David screaming like John Lennon did 10 years earlier. I'm hearing Japanese. What is going on here? And then we're continuing the freakiness. Right after It's No Game, we're going right into Alabama song.
Okay, so that's
that I had mentioned.
Yep, the track.
And we're continuing this. What am I hearing right now? So back to back, you've got the 2 most challenging pieces on the record. So after Alabama song, then we kind of bring it down, but not really, with some Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. So you're still getting a punch in the face, but at least a little more accessible to your ears compared to the last 2 songs. So after Scary Monsters, we go into Scream Like a Baby. With Scary Monsters, so I didn't mention this with my side 2, since it's the retrospective side, each song, to me at least, kind of represents a period in his career. So It's No Game kind of reflects on Lodger and that sound a little bit, whereas Alabama song kind of reflects on the glam era and pinups, with all those 60s bands that he was influenced by. And then Scary Monsters to me is like, oh, you remember Mick Ronson? You liked his guitar playing? Well, listen to Robert Fripp out Wano the Ronson.
And it also, I would say it also, if I were to compare it to the sound of any other album, Diamond Dogs. It gives me that dark, sort of weird Diamond Dogs feel, which I love.
It could, Scary Monsters could fit on Diamond Dogs, for sure. I didn't think of that. And then we go into Scream Like a Baby, like I said before, and to me, like, I kind of get like a side 1 Heroes vibe from that track. But then we close. We close with Crystal Japan. And Crystal Japan is our homage that we're paying to the Berlin trilogy, because Berlin was really like the restart button. So in a way, the Berlin trilogy, which we talked about in the Lodger episode, in addition to Scary Monsters, really closes out the first period of Bowie overall. And it's such a calm way to end the record. You remember those ambient pieces you really liked on side 2 of Heroes and Low? Then you're gonna really like this. But this is my way of paying tribute to Bowie, since he was going to end the record like this originally, and this song is like the goodbye, the really wrapping up the first 10 years of his career.
I like your whole thing. I would just take out It's No Game. And then it either just leave it out or throw Because You're Young in there, and I'm good with that. Okay. I think that's sounds way better. And also, Andy's gonna put a playlist together like that, so he has homework now.
Ready to go.
It's ready to go. I will have a link in the description below on our YouTube page, and I'll try to put it in the description of the podcast as well. But if not, it's on our YouTube page. So if you listen to the podcast, check out the episode on YouTube. It should be just Sound of Muzak on YouTube, and check out the playlist. So that'll be cool. I probably will listen to it as well.
Yeah, well, you'll have to let me know how it is, but yeah, let me know in the comments what you think as well too.
Nice,
I'm
cool.
not saying my resequencing of this record makes it a perfect 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 record. But for me at least, it at least brings it up from a 4 to a 4.5. Not to toot my own horn or anything.
Sometimes the flow of a record is important and can make or break a song, I think.
I would argue it's probably the most important.
And if an album's badly sequenced, it's like, you know, it can totally wreck the whole flow of it. So it seems like it could be a lot better. That being said, shall we talk about the next episode and cut this so I can go to bed?
Ooh, you want to reveal that now?
We might as well. It's going to be our next episode.
All right, you do it then. I'm done talking.
Okay. Should I make my announcement then as well?
Yeah. Why not?
So, I'm going to do a whole video about this, which I'll post on the channel. But you guys who have followed the Bowie series and their discography series in general, I think deserve to know. If you've followed us this far, you should deserve to know this. I'm going to take a hiatus for a few months from both this channel and my gaming channel. And so, because we're at a pretty pivotal's the wrong word, but like we're at a good sort of breaking point at the moment with the Bowie series. And there is going to be at least a several month gap between this and the next episode. Apologies for that. I will explain it in the video, but my personal life is very busy. But because of that, Andy over here had a really good idea.
Other direction.
I'll be pointing at you when I'm editing, so don't worry. I'll be pointing at you, yeah. James did the same thing when I recorded the other thing. But anyway, so Andy over here had a really interesting suggestion, and we're about midway through the discography. And Scary Monsters came out in 1980. The first album came out 67-ish or whatever. We've covered the whole first big classic chunk of Bowie's discography. So we're going to do a little retrospective. What did you call it? A mid-finale?
A mid-finale.
Mid-finale episode. And what we're going to do is go back through the albums and just pick our favorite tracks and give our like top 5 albums, right? Maybe like top 20 songs, top 5 albums. I don't want to hold to those exact numbers yet. That seems to be what we discussed, but in case we changed it, it's going to be some sort of ranking of at least 5 albums and at least 20 songs. They could be more than that, whatever. But yeah, this is a very classic. To me, this is the Bowie I'm the most familiar with. And it's considered his classic period, and I think it could be very interesting to just rank all of those and give you guys kind of a little sneak preview of what the ultimate finale of this series is going to be, which is going to be ranking and like all of his albums, his entire catalog, and doing like a top 30 songs, maybe something like that, at least.
Finale, yeah.
And yeah, there was something else there, but I can't remember what it was.
So we don't have to necessarily get too into the finale right now.
Yeah, a couple weeks it'll probably be out.
But as far as the mid finale goes, yeah, like Rob said, this is gonna be like our way of really wrapping up this first phase of Bowie's career, like you said. Before we do go on an initial hiatus for this series, I want to emphasize that too, for this series.
Mm-hmm.
So we will we'll do that, like you said. We'll rank the songs. I think we said 20, but that number could change.
Yeah.
As well as some of the records, so that when we do complete the rest of the discography for the finale, then we'll just rank everything.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Like Rob said, we're hoping to have that out in the next couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, I'm gonna start taking my hiatus around August, so I'd like to have it by then. Probably by mid-August, the latest. So. But
we are not, having said that, we're not giving a timeline as to how long this hiatus is going to be. Discography discussion will continue. We will eventually get through all of Bowie. But we will continue to put content out myself specifically, I started my album years journey with 1965. Maybe we'll link that somewhere. That series is going to continue for the foreseeable future until we're done with it. And I've got some other things I'm going to be doing that I'll be announcing pretty soon. So
yep, and
stay tuned
I'm looking to, even though I'm taking a hiatus, maybe here or there do a couple videos as well, and I will be back. And I think, to be fair with this series, we've been doing this for what, a year and a half now?
This series we've been doing.
It's been on and off. Yeah. It's been a bit inconsistent, but it's a lot of time and effort to put into doing this series, so it's been fun. A little caveat to our next video: we are only doing studio albums. We're leaving out live albums, and we're leaving out pinups as well. So
that would be 13 studio albums.
Yeah, so we're gonna do, like I said, when we do our albums and our songs, it's gonna be just from the studio albums that we dedicated episodes to. We briefly talked about pinups in, I think it was the Aladdin Sane episode. And we briefly talked about a couple of records, David Live, the Ziggy Stardust soundtrack, a few others. But we're going to just stick strictly to the studio records.
Yes, just studio. So I think we had talked about maybe doing like a top 5 from the debut to Scary Monster. So what our top 5 would be just from those, records. As well as like a top 20 songs as well.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes, yeah. But okay, I think that's it. Unless you got anything else.
That's it. We babbled on. I'm telling you, this is the longest episode.
Probably, yeah.
This was fun. I had a lot of fun talking about this record with you, as always. We, for the most part, continue to seem to agree with slight differences.
It seems like the record we disagreed with the most was Lodger, but we should get into that with our final, or with our mid wrap-up thing.
Yes, I agree. So, for real, let's end this. Like us on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't, if you're enjoying this.
We're on all the podcast platforms.
Please. Yes, and we are also on all
check us out on there as well.
And we'll have those links as well. But, it's bedtime. It's bedtime.
Bye, everybody. Peace.